Amid million-dollar machines and scornful looks, a discredited girl faces a problem no one can solve, and the unexpected happens. The sky over Riverside was cloudy as Olivia Andrews put on her worn-out coveralls. Outside, the first sounds of the West Side neighborhood mingled with the aroma of coffee that her grandfather, Jack, was preparing. Olivia looked at her hands, small, but calloused from growing up among wrenches and pliers. The grease stains seemed like permanent tattoos, telling stories that no diploma could narrate. "Liv, I need you to go to Premium Automotive to pick up that part I ordered," Jack called, from the makeshift kitchen at the back of the garage where they lived. "I've set aside the money and the receipt is on the table." That place had been her home for as long as she could remember. Andrews Auto Repair was nothing more than a simple shed with a zinc roof that turned hot days into veritable furnaces. But for Olivia, every corner of that space held lessons that no school could teach. "No problem, Grandpa," she replied, tying her curly hair into a messy bun. At 19, Olivia had never attended technical courses. Her learning came from silent observation, trial and error, and the stories Jack told about engines as if speaking of living beings. She took the old motorcycle she had fixed the previous year, a birthday present Jack had given her in the form of rusted parts, and headed to the other side of the city. Premium Automotive was located in Oakwood, an upscale area that Olivia rarely visited. As she approached, broken streetlights gave way to ornamental palm trees, and the uneven asphalt became perfectly smooth. The contrast was more than visual. It was a social chasm that Olivia felt in her skin each time she crossed the city. She parked her motorcycle in the space reserved for customers and took a deep breath. The paper with the order details was crumpled in her coverall pocket. Premium Automotive's facade gleamed with mirrored glass and a chrome logo. Pushing open the door, Olivia felt the cold air conditioning and the scent of imported air freshener. The receptionist, impeccably dressed, raised her eyes from her computer and couldn't hide her surprise at seeing this young woman in dirty coveralls and worn boots. "Can I help you?" she asked with a mechanical smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to pick up a part ordered for Jack Andrews from Andrews Auto Repair," Olivia replied, extending the crumpled paper. The receptionist, whose name tag identified her as Carly, Newman, took the paper with her fingertips as if it might contaminate her. "Wait a moment," she said, moving away with hurried steps. Olivia remained standing, feeling the gazes of employees as they passed. She pretended not to notice, but her ears caught a murmur coming from the internal area of the shop. A male voice rose in frustration. "This Ferrari has been here for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and nobody can identify the problem. What kind of specialists are you? The client is calling me every day." Intrigued, Olivia discreetly approached the door, separating the reception from the workshop. Through the gap, she saw a man of approximately 45 years, wearing an expensive dress shirt and gesturing to a group of mechanics in impeccable uniforms. Next to him, a red Ferrari 488 gleamed under the LED ceiling lights. "Mr. Foster, we've checked all the sensors and electronics. We've done 3 complete diagnostics," explained one of the mechanics, visibly embarrassed. "And why the hell does the car still have this power loss? And that irritating noise in the engine? Even my client, who knows nothing about mechanics, noticed it," the man shouted. Olivia recognized the type of sound they described before even hearing the engine. It was something her grandfather called delayed breathing, a term he had invented to explain when a mechanical part created a subtle but perceptible mismatch to trained ears. Without realizing, she murmured softly, "Sounds like the engine is breathing late." She didn't expect to be heard, but one of the assistants passing nearby caught the comment and raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" he asked. Olivia felt her face flush. "Nothing, just thinking out loud." Too late. The assistant had already approached the furious man and whispered something in his ear. The businessman, whom Olivia deduced to be Edward Foster, the owner of Premium Automotive, turned abruptly in her direction. "You there, girl in the coveralls, come here." Olivia hesitated but obeyed. All eyes converged on her as she walked toward the group. The sound of her steps echoed on the polished floor. "My assistant tells me you have a theory about the Ferrari's problem." Is that true? Edward questioned, with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. I just commented that from the sound you described, it seems like what my grandfather calls delayed breathing. It's not a technical term, just his way of explaining when some mechanical part is creating a mismatch that sensors don't capture. Well, muffled laughter spread through the group of mechanics. Edward crossed his arms with a cynical smile on his lips. And are you a Ferrari specialist by any chance? More laughter. Carly, who was observing the scene from afar, seemed embarrassed by the situation. No, sir, I've never worked on a Ferrari in my life, Olivia responded honestly, but without lowering her eyes. I just know the sound because I've heard something similar in other cars. Edward narrowed his eyes as if evaluating a move. Then, in an impulse that mixed amusement and challenge, he pointed to the Ferrari. Well, since you have such a special... Here, why don't you show my team of specialists where the problem is? It would be educational for all of us, wouldn't it? He provoked, drawing malicious smiles from the team. It was a social trap, Olivia knew. A public humiliation engineered to put the girl from the wrong side of town in her place. She thought about refusing, about simply taking the part she came for and leaving. But something inside her, the same obstinacy that had made her dismantle and reassemble engines since childhood, spoke louder. If you'll allow me, I can try. The silence that followed was almost palpable. Edward made a theatrical gesture, inviting her to approach the car. All yours. Let's see this lesson in intuitive mechanics. Olivia approached the vehicle with reverence. She had never touched anything so expensive in her life. She asked them to start the engine and closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating only on the sound. To her, engines had always spoken their own language, a symphony of moving parts that told stories about their internal workings. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes. Can I ask you to accelerate slightly? The mechanic looked at Edward, who nodded. When the engine accelerated, Olivia leaned over the open compartment, feeling the vibrations with her palm. It's here, she said, pointing to a specific region of the injection system. It's not an electrical or sensor problem. It's something physical, probably a fitting or coupling that's causing a minimal delay in response. The car loses power because it receives fuel with an imperceptible mismatch for the sensors, but enough to affect performance. The silence was total now. One of the most experienced mechanics approached and examined the indicated spot. After a few minutes of meticulous verification, he found a part with irregular wear, exactly where Olivia had pointed. Unbelievable, murmured the mechanic. The part has millimetric wear, but enough to cause the problem. How did you... Olivia shrugged. My grandfather says every engine tells its story to those who know how to listen. Edward Foster was astonished. His plan for humiliation had transformed into a display of talent that left his entire team disconcerted. At that moment, a client waiting in the VIP area had discreetly recorded the scene with his cell phone. Amazing, said Edward, regaining his composure. Where did you learn this? In my grandfather's shop in Westside. I don't have a diploma or technical course. I just grew up taking things apart and listening to engines. As Edward processed the information, Carly approached with a package. Here's the part you came to pick up, she said with a different smile, genuine this time. Olivia thanked her and turned to leave, but Edward interrupted her. Wait, what's your full name? Olivia Andrews. Well, Olivia Andrews, I think we need to talk. What Olivia didn't know was that at that exact moment, the video of her demonstration was already beginning to circulate on social media. And that casual encounter would forever change the course of her life and everyone around her. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The return. Home was different from that morning. Olivia felt the wind against her face as she rode her motorcycle through the streets of Riverside, but her thoughts were far away. The conversation with Edward Foster echoed in her mind like a misfiring engine. I want you to come work at Premium Automotive 3 days a week, he had said, in his private office decorated with racing trophies and photographs alongside celebrities. "I'll pay you double what a junior mechanic earns in the market." The proposal was tempting, but Olivia hesitated. "My grandfather needs me at the shop. It's just the two of us there." Edward smiled slightly. "He can benefit too. I can refer clients to you, services we don't handle here. Think of it as a partnership." Now, as she parked her motorcycle in the yard of the small garage, Olivia wondered how she would tell Jack the news. The old man was bent over the engine of an old Ford, his forehead furrowed in concentration. At 72, he still had the precision of someone who had spent his entire life deciphering the mechanical innards of vehicles. "Did you get the part, kid?" he asked without taking his eyes off the engine. "I got it, Grandpa, and something else." Jack raised his eyes, noticing the change in his granddaughter's tone. Olivia told him about the incident at Premium Automotive, trying to minimize the part where she was initially treated with disdain. But when she mentioned the job offer, she saw her grandfather's expression harden. "Edward Foster." The old man repeated the name as if tasting something bitter. "That place isn't for people like us, Liv. They're different people, with different values. But, Grandpa, it's an opportunity. I can learn new things, work with technologies we'd never have access to here." "And what do they want to learn from you?" retorted Jack, cleaning his hands on an already grimy cloth. "People like Edward don't offer opportunities without expecting something in return. Remember that." The discussion was interrupted by the sound of a notification on Olivia's phone. It was Brooke, her only close friend since childhood, sending a desperate message. "Liv, you're famous. There's a video of you going viral." Confused, Olivia opened the link her friend had sent. The video, recorded by the Premium Automotive client, showed her moment of diagnosing the Ferrari. The caption said, "Girl without diploma humiliates engineers by identifying defect in Ferrari that nobody could solve." The post already had more than 50,000 views in just a few hours. "My God," murmured Olivia, feeling her face flush. She showed the phone to her grandfather, who adjusted his glasses to see better. "Now I understand Foster's sudden interest," Jack commented bitterly. "Free marketing for his shop." That night, Olivia could barely sleep. Her phone wouldn't stop receiving notifications from strangers tagging her and commenting on the video. Some asked for advice about problems with their cars. Others questioned whether she really had no technical training. There were also negative comments, suggesting that it was all just a staged publicity stunt. The next morning, upon opening the shop, Olivia and Jack found something unusual: a small line of people waiting outside. They were neighborhood residents who had seen the video and brought their vehicles with various problems. "Is it true that you can hear what cars say?" asked a middle-aged woman, owner of a Chevy with ignition problems. Olivia smiled, embarrassed. "It's not quite like that. I just have a knack for identifying some problems." While attending to the unexpected customers, Olivia received a call from Edward Foster. "I see you're already reaping the fruits of fame," he said with a laugh. 20 reporters called me wanting to know who the prodigy mechanic is. We need to talk in person about how we're going to handle this." Olivia felt a chill. She hadn't considered the implications of becoming a phenomenon on social media. "Mr. Foster, I didn't ask anyone to film me. I just wanted to help with the car." "I know, Olivia, and it's precisely that authenticity that people are loving. Let's turn this into something positive for all of us. Come to Premium tomorrow. And please call me Edward." When she hung up, she found Jack watching her with concern. What did he want? "To talk about the video." "People are calling his shop asking about me." Jack shook his head. "That's how it starts. First they take advantage of your talent, then they discard you when you're no longer useful. I've seen this movie before." There was something in Jack's tone, an old hurt that Olivia had never noticed. She wanted to ask more, but new customers were arriving, and the small garage had never been so busy. The next day, Olivia returned to Premium Automotive. This time, the reception was completely different. Carly smiled broadly upon seeing her, as if they were old acquaintances. "Olivia, Edward is waiting for you in his office. Would you like coffee?" Disconcerted by the change in treatment, Olivia politely declined and followed to Edward's office. Inside, she found not only Edward, but also 3 of the main mechanics of the team, including Andrew Mitchell, the shop chief, a man with a serious expression and rigid posture. "Olivia, glad you came." Edward stood up to receive her. "We were discussing how to integrate you into our team." Andrew didn't seem to share the enthusiasm. "With all due respect, Mr. Foster, I don't understand how someone without technical training can fit into our standard of work. We have protocols, international certifications, and yet it was she who solved the problem with the Ferrari that you couldn't identify in 3 weeks," Edward cut in, without losing his smile. "I'm not suggesting she replace anyone. I'm proposing that we add a new perspective to the team." Olivia felt like an exotic animal being exhibited. "I don't want to cause problems. If the team isn't comfortable with my presence, I can refuse the offer." Edward made a dismissive gesture. "Nonsense. Andrew and the others will understand your value when they work with you. Isn't that right, Andrew?" The Q. Shop Chief nodded stiffly, but his eyes communicated another message. After the others left, Edward explained to Olivia how her role would be. Initially, she would accompany the more complex diagnoses, especially in cases where conventional methods didn't identify the problem. "Think of yourself as our special consultant," he explained. "I don't want you to lose your gut intuition. It's precisely what sets you apart." Upon leaving the meeting, Olivia found Carly organizing some documents at the reception. "So you accepted the job?" asked the receptionist. "I accepted, but I still don't know if I made the right choice." Carly smiled. "If it makes you feel better, I thought what you did with that Ferrari was amazing. I have a 2010 Corolla that makes a strange noise for months. No mechanic has fixed it so far." "I can take a look at it sometime," offered Olivia, surprised at the approach. "Really? That would be great." Carly hesitated for a moment. "You know, I also wanted to work with mechanics when I was younger. My dad had a small garage in Harrison Heights, but life took a different turn." That unexpected revelation created a small bridge between the 2 young women's very different worlds. Before they could continue the conversation, Olivia noticed a tall man, approximately 35 years old, observing them with interest. He wore casual clothes, but the watch on his wrist and his imported shoes betrayed his purchasing power. "You must be the famous Olivia Andrews," he said, approaching with a charming smile. "Mark Rivers. I saw your video yesterday and needed to meet in person the girl who's revolutionizing mechanics in Riverside." Carly leaned in discreetly. "Mark is one of our most important clients," she whispered. "Pleasure to meet you," replied Olivia, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. "The pleasure is mine. I have a proposal that might interest you," said Mark, handing her a card. "I own Mr. Racing, an amateur racing team. We're always looking for talents like you." Olivia took the card, confused. "But I'm not a driver," Mark laughed. "Racing teams need good mechanics more than drivers. Think about it and call me if you're interested." When Mark moved away, Carly widened her eyes. "Wow, Mr. Racing is famous in the amateur circuit. They participate in competitions all over the country." On the way back home, Olivia felt torn between the excitement of new possibilities and the fear of disappointing her grandfather. Arriving at the garage, she found Jack talking to a man in a suit who was gesturing while pointing to various corners of the small shed. "What's happening, Grandpa?" she asked, parking her motorcycle. Jack's expression was heavy. "This is Mr. Martin from the bank. He came to remind me that we're 3 months behind on the payments for the loan I took out to renovate the shop last year." The man in the suit nodded formally. "Unfortunately, if there is no regularization in the next 30 days, we will have to take more severe measures." When the banker left, Jack sat heavily on a wooden stool. "I didn't want to worry you with this, kid." "Why? Didn't you tell me before, Grandpa? We could have looked for a solution together." The old mechanic suddenly looked older. "Foolish pride, I thought I could solve it by myself, but the last few months have been difficult. Few customers, expensive parts." Olivia sat beside her, grandfather placing her hand on his shoulder. "Maybe this job at Premium Automotive came at the right time then." Jack raised his eyes, surprised. "You accepted?" "I did." And there's more. The pay is good, Grandpa. I can help with the loan payments. Instead of the negative reaction she expected, Jack just sighed deeply. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to accept that times have changed. That night, while organizing her basic tools to take to Premium Automotive the next day, Olivia found an old photo hidden in a drawer of the workbench. It showed Jack much younger, alongside another man, both smiling in front of a garage. Turning the photograph, she read the faded inscription, Jack and Edward, Horizon Garage, 1995. Olivia felt her heart accelerate. Edward. Could it be possible that Edward Foster, the owner of Premium Automotive, was the same man in the photo? And if so, why had her grandfather never mentioned this connection? She put the photo in her pocket, determined to investigate further. Something told her there was much more to this story than it appeared. Old secrets that could explain Jack's resistance, and perhaps the true reason for Edward's sudden interest in her talent. Her phone vibrated with a message from Carly. Good luck tomorrow on your first day. Don't let Andrew intimidate you. Under that scowl he hides a soft heart. Olivia smiled. In less than 48 hours, her life had turned upside down. She was about to navigate between two completely different worlds, carrying a skill that even she didn't fully understand, and secrets from the past that were beginning to emerge. What else did fate have in store for the girl who could hear what engines wanted to say? Olivia's first official day at Premium Automotive began with curious looks and whispers. Wearing a new uniform, which Edward had specially made for her, she felt like an intruder trying to blend in. The impeccable fabric and embroidered logo contrasted with her hands, which even after scrubbing hard, still retained permanent traces of grease in the cuticles. Andrew Mitchell, the shop chief, received her with excessive formality. You'll be in the advanced diagnostics area, he explained, guiding her among sophisticated equipment that she only knew from magazines. Normally, an intern would take months to access this area, but Mr. Foster insisted. The tone made it clear that he didn't approve of the exception. Olivia noticed the looks from the other mechanics, some curious, others clearly resentful. Only Phil, a young, recently graduated technician, approached with a genuine smile. So, you're the girl from the video. Man, that was incredible, he said, extending his hand. I'm dying to see how you work. This listening to engines thing is fascinating. The morning passed between technical explanations about protocols, diagnostic software, and equipment that seemed to come from NASA laboratories. Olivia absorbed everything eagerly, but missed the simplicity of her grandfather's shop, where problems were solved with intuition and basic tools. Around noon, Edward appeared in the workshop accompanied by a client, Mark Rivers, the man who had approached her the day before. Olivia, called Edward, I want you to take a special look at Mark's Porsche. He's feeling a subtle vibration that our equipment can't identify. Andrew tensed his jaw. Mr. Foster, we've already done 3 complete checks on this vehicle. And yet the client feels something is wrong, retorted Edward without losing his smile. Let's try a different approach, shall we? Mark was watching the scene with interest, as if he were attending a private show. Olivia felt pressured, aware that everyone was expecting either a confirmation of her talent or a failure that would validate their skepticism. The silver Porsche 911 was parked in the testing area. Olivia approached with reverence. It was a vehicle that cost more than her grandfather's entire shop. Can you start it, please? She asked Phil, who had offered to help. When the engine came to life, Olivia closed her eyes, concentrating only on the sound. The vibration that Mark had mentioned was almost imperceptible, more a sensation than a sound itself. Can you accelerate slightly and keep it at 2,000 RPM, she asked. After a few moments, Olivia opened her eyes. There's a minimal misalignment in the transmission shaft. It's not serious enough to register on the sensors as a failure, but it causes a vibration that propagates through the chassis. Andrew crossed his arms. Impossible. We checked the alignment twice. Excuse me. Olivia approached the lower part of the vehicle. May I? Andrew reluctantly nodded. She lay down on the mechanic's creeper and slid under the car. After a few minutes, she emerged with a serious expression. It's exactly what I thought. There's irregular wear on one of the mounting supports. When the car reaches certain speeds, the vibration amplifies. Phil crouched down to check and whistled softly. She's right. The wear is minimal, but it's exactly where she pointed. Andrew seemed torn between incredulity and reluctant admiration. Mark, on the other hand, was enthusiastically applauding. Incredible. You felt exactly what I've been feeling for weeks, he exclaimed. Edward was smiling like a maestro whose orchestra was perfectly executing the symphony. That's why Olivia is here. She sees, or rather, hears, what others can't. At the end of the day, while putting away her things, Olivia was surprised by Carly. I heard you impressed Mark today, commented the receptionist. He spent half an hour talking about you while paying the bill. Olivia shrugged. I just did my job. Don't be modest. Nobody here managed to identify that problem. Carly hesitated for a moment, playing with a paperclip. Listen, I'm going to a barbecue next Saturday at a friend's house in Elmwood. Nothing too formal. Want to come with me? I think it would. Be nice for you to meet people outside the work environment. The proposal caught Olivia by surprise. She wasn't used to socializing outside her restricted circle. I don't know. I have to help my grandfather. At the shop on weekends. Think about it. It would be good for you to have contacts beyond here and your grandfather's shop. On the way home, Olivia stopped at a gas station to refuel her motorcycle. While waiting, she noticed two young men, pointing in her direction and whispering. One of them approached timidly. Excuse me, are you Olivia from the video? The mechanic who identified the problem with the Ferrari. Olivia nodded, embarrassed. The young man smiled. Man, my whole college is talking about you. I'm a mechanical engineering student at Riverside State, and our vehicle dynamics professor showed your video in class as an example of intuitive diagnostics. The information left her stunned. Her video was being used as teaching material at one of the most prestigious universities in the country. Upon arriving home, she found Jack sitting on the improvised porch, contemplating the sky that was rapidly darkening. Next to him, a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a small glass revealed that the day had not been easy. How was it there? Asked the old man, without taking his eyes off the horizon. Different. Everything is very organized, very technical. Olivia sat down next to her grandfather, but I managed to identify a problem that no one had noticed in a Porsche. Jack smiled slightly. I expected nothing less from you. Olivia took a deep breath, gathering courage. She removed the photograph she had found from her pocket. Grandpa, who is this man in the photo with you? Jack's expression hardened when he saw the image. His trembling fingers touched the faded paper, as if trying to reach a distant memory. Where did you find this? In your tool drawer. It's Edward Foster, isn't it, the owner of Premium Automotive? The old man sighed deeply, serving himself a bit more whiskey. Yes, it's him. A long time ago. Why did you never tell me that you knew each other? Because some stories are too painful to remember, kid. Jack took a sip before continuing. Edward was my apprentice more than 30 years ago. A smart kid with a talent for mechanics, but impatient. He started like you, observing, learning gradually. At that time, I had a larger shop, Horizon, garage with 2 partners. The revelation surprised Olivia. She had never imagined that her grandfather had owned anything beyond that small shed. What happened? Edward grew up, learned, and when he managed to save some money, he decided he wanted more. He convinced one of my partners to join him in a new venture. They took clients, contacts, part of the equipment. Jack paused. That broke Horizon. Garage. My other partner gave up. I tried to continue alone, but times were already changing. I ended up losing everything except for some basic tools. And Premium Automotive. Started small, but Edward always had ambition. He took courses, traveled abroad, specialized in imported cars, and he always knew how to deal with wealthy people, something I never learned to do. Olivia felt her chest tighten. So that's why you didn't want me to work there? I don't trust. His intentions, Liv. Edward does nothing without a purpose. But why would he hire me after so many years? For revenge? Jack shook his head. Edward isn't a man of revenge. He's a man of opportunity. And you, my granddaughter, are a golden opportunity for someone like him. Before they could continue the conversation, Olivia's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Olivia, it's Mark Rivers. Hope I'm not calling too late. She looked at her grandfather, surprised. No, it's fine. Did something happen with the Porsche? No, the car is perfect now. I'm calling for another reason. Remember I mentioned my racing team? We have an important race in 2 months at Laguna Seca, an event for amateur teams but with good visibility. Our chief mechanic had to leave due to personal problems and we're desperate. Olivia felt her heart race. And what does that have to do with me? I want to invite you to join the MR racing team. It would be temporary work, well paid, with everything covered during the competition week in California. The proposal was too tempting to ignore. I need to think about it, Mark. I have commitments here. Of course I understand, but don't take too long. We need someone with your talent, someone who can hear what the engines are saying. When she hung up, she found Jack watching her with a mixture of concern and resignation. Another proposal? Olivia nodded, feeling torn. To work on a racing team at Laguna Seca. The old mechanic smiled sadly. The world is opening up for you, kid. Maybe it's time for you to fly higher than this old shed allows. I won't abandon you, Grandpa. Never. I know. But I also don't want to be the reason holding you back. That night, lying in her simple bed, Olivia contemplated the choices before her. Premium Automotive, with its sophisticated technological environment, Mark's racing team, offering a completely new experience, and her grandfather's small shop, her safe harbor, now threatened by debt. All this while trying to process the revelation about Edward and Jack's past. Her phone vibrated with a message from Phil, the young technician from Premium. You killed it today. Andrew was speechless, and that's super rare. There are some people here who want to get to know you better. If you need any help, I'm available. The unexpected kindness made her smile. Maybe there was a place for her in that sophisticated world after all. Or maybe her destiny was on the racetracks, where intuition was as important as technique. Or perhaps she would find a way to unite all these worlds, building her own path. The only certainty was that nothing would be the same. The viral video had opened doors she didn't even know existed. And behind those doors, old stories waited. To be rediscovered, unexpected connections were revealed, and challenges that would test not only her skill with engines, but her very identity. In the silence of the night, Olivia fell asleep with the distant sound of engines in her mind, no longer just the simple engines from her grandfather's shop, but also the sophisticated purr of luxury cars from Premium and the powerful roar of racing vehicles that perhaps would soon become part of her life. The following weeks were a marathon of adaptation for Olivia. Her days were divided between Premium Automotive, her grandfather's shop, and on Wednesday nights the MR Racing Team's warehouse on the outskirts of Riverside. She had accepted Mark's proposal with one condition. She could work only at specific times, maintaining her commitments to Jack and Edward. I expected nothing less from you, Mark replied when she stated her conditions. Loyalty is a rare quality these days. The MR Racing Team was an eclectic group. Besides Mark, who was both owner and driver, there were 2 experienced mechanics, Roger and Neil, a data engineer named Dan, and 2 assistants who handled logistics. They all received her with curiosity and a certain skepticism. The girl from the viral video would need to prove her worth in practice. That Wednesday, Olivia arrived at the team's warehouse after an exhausting day at Premium Automotive. The stock car that Mark used in competitions was disassembled, with parts of the engine spread across an illuminated workbench. We're having problems with oil pressure in high-speed turns, explained Dan, adjusting his thin-framed glasses. The data shows a momentary drop that we can't explain. Olivia observed the parts carefully. They were similar to ones she knew, but lighter, specifically designed for speed. Can I see the data from the last race? Dan handed her a tablet with complex graphs. Olivia studied the numbers for a few minutes, correlating them with the track images. It's not a pressure problem, she finally concluded. It's a vibration issue. When the car enters specific curves, the speed combined with the angle creates a frequency that affects the pressure sensor. The oil is circulating normally, but the sensor registers a drop because it's vibrating out of sync. The silence that followed was broken by Roger, the older mechanic, who whistled softly. Damn, the girl might be right. Let's check the sensor. Positioning. After hours of work, they reassembled the system with the sensor fixed differently. In the simulation test, the data stabilized. Amazing, commented Dan, comparing the old and new graphs. How did you identify this just by looking at the numbers? Olivia shrugged. It wasn't the numbers, it was the pattern. The drops always happened in the same type of curve, with the same inclination. It had to be something related to the physics of movement, not the system itself. Mark, who was observing everything closely, smiled with satisfaction. That's exactly why we need you, Olivia. You see beyond the data, you feel the car. That night marked her true acceptance on the team. On the way out, Roger, who had initially been the most skeptical, offered to drive her home. You know, I've worked with engineers trained at the best universities, he commented as he drove through the dark streets of Riverside. But few had. This connection with engines, where does it come from? Honestly, I can't explain, replied Olivia, watching the city lights through the window. It's always been this way, as if engines spoke to me. My father used to say some people are born with an ear for music, others with an eye for painting, philosophized Roger. Maybe you were born with senses tuned for mechanics. Upon arriving home, she found Jack awake, despite the late hour. Her grandfather's expression was worried. Problems, Grandpa? I received a call from the bank today. They're willing to renegotiate the debt, but the conditions aren't good. Olivia sat beside him. How much do we need? More than we have, answered the old man with a sigh. But I don't want you to worry about this. You're already doing more than you should, working in 3 different places. It's temporary, Grandpa. When I get paid from Premium and the racing team, we can get the accounts in order. Jack looked at her with tenderness mixed with concern. You're spreading yourself too thin, kid, and I've noticed something different about you, a new restlessness. Olivia couldn't deny it. In recent weeks, her world had expanded in ways she had never imagined. She had met people from completely different realities, accessed sophisticated technologies, felt the adrenaline of the racetracks. It was as if she had tasted a range of possibilities that she had never considered for herself. I'm fine, Grandpa, just adapting to the changes. The next morning, Olivia arrived at Premium Automotive earlier than usual. She found Edward in a tense conversation with Andrew in the administrative area. When they saw her, they immediately interrupted the discussion. Olivia! Just who I wanted to see, Edward forced a smile. I have a surprise for you. Let's go to my office. Once there, Edward closed the door and indicated a chair for her to sit. I received an invitation from Riverside Technical College. They're organizing a workshop on new approaches in automotive mechanics and want you to be one of the speakers. Olivia widened her eyes. Me? Give a lecture? But I don't have academic training or experience in public speaking. Exactly why they want you there. You represent a different intuitive approach. It would be an incredible opportunity for visibility for Premium Automotive and, of course, for you. Something in Edward's tone aroused suspicions in Olivia. Why do I have the impression that you've already accepted for me? Edward laughed, momentarily looking away. Let's say I gave the impression that you would be available. It's in 2 weeks, on a Thursday. Thursdays I work at my grandfather's shop. We can arrange for someone to replace him that day. Think of it as an investment in your future, Olivia. The mention of a replacement for Jack bothered her deeply, as if her grandfather were dispensable, a piece that could be exchanged so she could advance. I'll think about it, she replied dryly. In the hallway, she found Carly, who seemed to be waiting for her. I heard about the invitation from Riverside. Tech, commented the receptionist. It's a great opportunity. How do you know about that? Carly hesitated. Edward has been mentioning it for days. He's using your name to attract attention to the shop. Since that video went viral, we've received twice as many clients. The information didn't surprise Olivia, but it confirmed her suspicions. Edward was using her as a marketing strategy, exactly as Jack had predicted. By the way, continued Carly, have you thought about the barbecue on Saturday? It would be great if you could come. Carly's sincere invitation contrasted with Edward's manipulation. 14 bitoys. I think I'll accept. It would be good to do something normal for a change. Saturday arrived faster than expected. Olivia left the shop at noon after helping Jack with 2 cars that needed urgent repairs. She took a long shower, trying to remove the traces of grease that seemed to be a permanent part of her skin, and wore the only outfit she considered suitable for a social event, less faded jeans and a simple blue blouse she had received as a gift from Brooke the previous Christmas. Carly picked her up punctually. Her small Corolla, which Olivia had fixed the previous week, now ran without the strange noise that had bothered the owner so much. You look beautiful, commented Carly sincerely. Different without the uniform or coveralls. I feel strange, confessed Olivia, as if I were in costume. The barbecue was at Paula's house, Carly's college friend, in a middle-class condominium in Elmwood. When they arrived, the party had already started. About 20 people were chatting animatedly in the yard, where a grill exhaled inviting aromas. Everyone, this is Olivia I mentioned, Carly introduced, the amazing mechanic who works with me at Premium. Some faces lit up, with recognition. The girl from the Ferrari video? Asked a bearded guy. Man, you're like a celebrity. Olivia smiled, embarrassed. She still hadn't gotten used to the sudden notoriety. As the afternoon progressed, she was surprised to find that she was actually enjoying that relaxed environment. The people were welcoming, asked genuine questions about her work, shared stories and laughter, without the weight of expectations she felt at Premium or the racing team. So you really don't have technical training? Asked Paula as they served themselves drinks. Learned everything in practice? From my grandfather mainly. He has a special way of explaining things. Fascinating. I'm in my last year of mechanical engineering and, honestly, sometimes I think we spend too much time with theories and too little with practical application. The conversation flowed naturally to various topics: music, movies, plans for the future. For a few hours, Olivia felt like any other 19-year-old, without the weight of responsibilities she carried. When the sun began to set, her phone rang. It was Dan, from the MR racing team. Olivia, sorry to bother you on the weekend, but we're having a problem with the car's braking system. Mark thinks you should take a look before Monday's tests. Reality was calling her back. I can stop by tomorrow morning, she replied, feeling the curious looks from the other guests. Was that from the racing team? Asked Carly when she hung up. Yes, a problem with the braking system. Wow, you're really becoming indispensable everywhere. The comment, although made in jest, touched on something deep. Olivia was, in fact, being required on multiple fronts. The girl who once lived in the shadow of a small peripheral garage now navigated between diverse worlds, all wanting a piece of her talent. On Sunday, after examining the racing car's braking system and identifying a problem in the pressure distributor, Olivia stopped by Premium Automotive to pick up some notes she had left there. She didn't expect to find anyone since the shop closed on Sundays, but was surprised to see Edward's car parked. Entering silently through the back door, she heard raised voices coming from the meeting room. She immediately recognized Edward's voice and, to her surprise, Mark Rivers. That wasn't the agreement, Edward, Mark was saying with evident irritation. You said she would be available full-time in the weeks before the competition. And she will be, replied Edward, in a conciliatory tone. But we need her for this event at Riverside Tech. It's strategic for all of us. All of us, or for you and your shop? The girl is already dividing herself between 3 jobs. You're also benefiting from her talent. Don't play the victim. Olivia felt her stomach sink. They were talking about her, negotiating her time as if she were a commodity. She took a step back, but her elbow hit a shelf of tools, causing a metallic noise. The voices immediately fell silent. Seconds later, Edward appeared in the hallway, with Mark right behind. "Olivia!" exclaimed Edward, trying to hide his embarrassment. "What are you doing here on a Sunday?" "I came to get my notes," she replied, feeling her face burn with contained anger. "I didn't know you two had meetings about my schedule without consulting me." The two men exchanged embarrassed looks. Mark was the first to speak. "It's not what it seems, Olivia. We were just trying to coordinate my time," she interrupted. "As if I were shared property or an investment you made together." Edward tried to intervene. "Olivia, you're misunderstanding. Mark and I just—" "Understood perfectly," she cut in, picking up her notes from the bench. "My grandfather was right about you, Edward, about how you see people as opportunities, not as people." With that, she turned her back and quickly left, ignoring their calls. Tears of frustration blurred her vision as she rode back home. She felt betrayed, used like a rare part that everyone wanted to possess, but no one really valued for who she was. Upon arriving at the shop, she found it strangely silent. Jack would normally be working on some personal project even on Sunday. She called for her grandfather several times, with no response. That's when she noticed the note on the main workbench. "Liv went to the hospital with Mr. Wilson, had a dizzy spell during fishing. Don't worry, it's probably just fatigue, back tonight. Grandpa." Fear instantly replaced anger. Jack never got sick, never complained of fatigue. For him to admit feeling unwell to the point of going to the hospital, something serious must have happened. Her phone rang again. It was Mark, probably trying to explain himself. She rejected the call and immediately dialed Mr. Wilson, her grandfather's longtime friend. "Olivia, we're at Riverside General. Your grandfather is fine, but the doctors want to run some tests. He had a strong dizzy spell, almost fainted. I'm coming right now." As she rushed to the hospital, Olivia felt the weight of all her recent choices. She had allowed herself to be seduced by worlds that weren't hers, neglecting what really mattered. And now her grandfather was in a hospital, while she divided herself among people who saw her only as a valuable asset. Life, which seemed to open up in infinite possibilities weeks ago, now closed in on a single certainty. She would need to make difficult choices, and quickly. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The corridor of Riverside General Hospital seemed endless as Olivia walked hurriedly, guided by a staff member. She found Mr. Wilson, a grey-haired gentleman with skin weathered by the sun, sitting in a plastic chair outside a room. "How is he?" she asked, breathless. "Better. The doctors said it was a spike in blood pressure, probably caused by stress." Wilson stood up with difficulty. "They're doing some more tests, but I believe they'll release him soon." Olivia felt a tightness in her chest. Jack had always been the rock in her life, unwavering, resilient. Seeing him vulnerable was like witnessing an unnatural phenomenon. "Did he mention anything about worries before he felt ill?" Wilson hesitated. "We were talking about the shop, about debts and deadlines. You know how reserved he is about these things, but I noticed the situation is worse than he admits." At that moment, the door to the room opened and a nurse came out, followed by a young doctor carrying a clipboard. "Family of Mr. Jack Andrews." "I'm his granddaughter," Olivia stepped forward. "Your grandfather is stable. The electrocardiogram didn't show any concerning changes, but his blood pressure is quite high. We're going to keep him under observation until tomorrow and prescribe medication." "Can I see him?" The doctor nodded. "Of course, but he needs tranquility. Avoid stressful topics." Inside the room, Jack seemed smaller and more fragile against the white hospital sheets. He had a device measuring his pressure and a contrary expression that was so characteristic of him that, despite the situation, it made Olivia smile. "All this fuss over nothing," grumbled the old man. "A little dizziness, and Wilson drags me here as if I were dying." "You never get sick, Grandpa. Of course we're worried." Jack made a dismissive gesture. "Nonsense. I'll be back at the shop tomorrow." Olivia pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "The doctor said you need to rest. He mentioned stress, high blood pressure. Doctors always say that." Jack studied his granddaughter's face. "You seem upset. Did something happen?" It was typical of him. Even hospitalized, he worried more about her than himself. Olivia hesitated. The doctor had recommended avoiding stressful topics, but keeping secrets had never been the style of their relationship. "I discovered that Edward and Mark have been meeting to discuss my schedule, as if they were negotiating an asset." Jack didn't seem surprised. "What did I tell you? Edward has always been like that. He sees value where others don't, and then monetizes that value. I feel used, Grandpa, as if my talent were the only thing that mattered to them." The old mechanic reached for his granddaughter's hand. "Your talent is extraordinary, Liv. It's natural that people want to take advantage of it. The question is, what do you want to do with it?" It was a question she had been avoiding. Between running from one place to another, trying to please everyone, she hadn't stopped to consider her own desires. "I don't know. I like working with cars, solving problems, but lately it seems like I'm just being dragged along by the current." "Then it's time to take the helm, kid. You have the right to choose your own path." They sat in silence for a few moments, each absorbed in their thoughts. It was Jack who finally spoke. "I have something to tell you. Something I've been postponing." Olivia straightened in her chair, apprehensive. "What is it?" "I received an offer to sell the shop. A real estate businessman wants the land to build a commercial building." The revelation fell like lightning. The small garage was more than a business. It was their home, Jack's legacy, the place where Olivia had discovered her passion for engines. "Sell? But Grandpa, that shop is our life." "It's good money, Olivia. Enough to pay off all the debts, and still have some left to start over with something smaller, maybe." "Start over? At 72? Jack smiled sadly. "Not for me, for you. You could use the money to study, take courses, open your own business someday." "I don't want another place. I want our shop." "Life is made of difficult choices, kid. Sometimes we need to let go of something we love to build a better future." Those words stayed with Olivia throughout the night, as she watched over her grandfather's restless sleep in the uncomfortable hospital armchair. In the morning, Jack was discharged with recommendations for rest and a list of medications to control his blood pressure. Olivia called Premium Automotive and the MR racing team, informing them that she couldn't come in that day. Edward was the first to return the call. "Olivia, I'm sorry about your grandfather. If you need help with specialist doctors or medications." "Thank you, but we're fine," she cut him off, still hurt by the discovery of the previous day. "I just need to stay with him today." "About yesterday? It's not what you think. Mark and I were just coordinating schedules to not overload you." "Discussing me without my knowledge or consent." Edward sighed. "It was a mistake, I admit. I really value your talent, Olivia. I don't want to lose it." After hanging up, it was Mark's turn to call. His approach was more direct. "I should have talked to you first. It was unethical on my part." The honesty took her by surprise. "Why didn't you talk to me?" "Fear, I suppose. Fear that you would choose Premium over the team. Edward has more to offer in terms of long-term career." Again, the frankness disarmed Olivia. "I don't know what I want in the long term, Mark. I just know that I don't like being treated like a commodity." "Fair enough. When your grandfather is better, can we talk in person? Without Edward, without pressure, just an honest conversation." Olivia reluctantly agreed. In the days that followed, she divided herself between caring for Jack, attending to emergencies at the shop, and maintaining minimal commitments with Premium Automotive and the racing team. Exhaustion began to take its toll. On a particularly difficult afternoon while working on a complex diagnosis at Premium, she made a mistake that almost damaged the sensor of an imported vehicle. Andrew, who would normally have taken the opportunity to criticize her, surprisingly intervened before the error had consequences. "You need to rest," he said, in a tone that mixed concern and authority. "You're working beyond your limit." "I'm fine," insisted Olivia, although her eyes burned with fatigue. "No, you're not. And you know what happens when exhausted mechanics work on expensive cars? Accidents. Expensive accidents. Andrew's frankness, although harsh, was a sign of professional respect that he had never shown before. Olivia nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. "I'll take a break." In the break room, she found Carly preparing coffee. The receptionist smiled when she saw her. "You look worn out. Coffee?" "Please." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the aroma of coffee filling the small space. It was Carly who finally broke the silence. "How's your grandfather?" "Better, but still worried about the shop. The debts, you know." Carly nodded understandingly. "My dad went through something similar before closing his garage. It's hard for small businesses to compete these days." "He received an offer to sell the property. And how do you feel about that?" The question caught Olivia by surprise. Everyone else seemed to have ready opinions about what she should do, but no one had asked how she felt. "Devastated," she admitted. "That place is my history, my identity. But at the same time, I know my grandfather is suffering with the financial worries. Have you considered a third option, beyond keeping the shop as it is or selling it?" "What option?" "Reinventing the business, adapting, using your new visibility to transform the shop into something different." The suggestion planted a seed in Olivia's mind, a possibility she hadn't considered. That afternoon, when she returned to the shop, she found Jack in a tense conversation with a man in a suit whom Olivia recognized as the representative of the developer interested in the property. "Ms. Andrews," the man greeted, extending his hand, "your grandfather told me you're also an owner of the shop." "Co-owner," Jack corrected. "I put her name on the deed when she turned 18. This was new information for Olivia. She had never known that she legally had a part in the property. "As I was telling your grandfather, our offer has a deadline. The real estate market is dynamic, and other areas also interest us." "We need more time to think," Olivia replied, firmly. "Of course, one more week then. After that, we'll have to redirect our investment." When the man left, Jack looked exhausted. "He increased the offer, Olivia. It's a lot of money." "Why did you never tell me that you put my name on the deed?" "Because I didn't want you to feel obligated to stay here if you wanted to follow another path." Jack smiled sadly. "But now, it seems we'll have to decide together." Before they could continue the conversation, Olivia's phone rang. It was Dan from the MR racing team. "Olivia, we have a serious problem. The car is showing intermittent failures in the electrical system during tests. Mark is worried. The competition is in 2 weeks. Have you checked the control unit sensors?" "Yes, and nothing. It's like the problem appears and disappears randomly." Olivia sighed. "I'll stop by tomorrow morning." When she hung up, she found Jack watching her with a mixture of pride and resignation. "You're being required from all sides, kid. It's temporary, Grandpa. Just until the competition. And after that, Edward will want you to dedicate yourself fully to premium, and I'm sure other opportunities will arise." Olivia had no answer for that. The future, which once seemed so distant and nebulous, now demanded immediate decisions. The next morning, she arrived early at the MR racing warehouse. The stock car was connected to various diagnostic equipment, with Dan and Roger bent over. "A laptop? Finally!" exclaimed Roger upon seeing her. "We tested everything, Olivia, everything, and the problem keeps appearing in high RPM tests." Olivia asked them to start the engine. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the sound, the vibrations. There was something there, something subtle, almost imperceptible to those who didn't. "Know how to listen? Accelerate to 7,000 RPM and maintain," she asked. When the engine reached the requested RPM, Olivia placed her hand on a specific part of the compartment. The vibration was different, disharmonic. "It's here," she said, opening her eyes. "It's not the electrical system itself. It's an interference caused by vibration. Look at this clamp." Roger inspected the indicated spot and whistled softly. "It's minimally loose, so little that it would pass any visual inspection. But at high revs it causes a vibration that interferes with the adjacent sensor," completed Olivia, "like noise at a specific frequency." Dan was looking at her with admiration. "How do you notice these things?" Olivia shrugged. It's like hearing an out-of-tune note in a song. You feel something is wrong even without knowing exactly what. While the team worked to correct the problem, Mark arrived at the warehouse. His face lit up when he saw Olivia. You came. Found the problem? A loose clamp causing interference. Through vibration, replied Roger before Olivia could speak. She identified in minutes what we had been trying to discover for days. Mark smiled with satisfaction. I expected nothing less. Can we talk in private, Olivia? They headed to a small office at the back of the warehouse. Mark closed the door and indicated a chair for Olivia. First, I want to apologize again for the conversation with Edward. It was inappropriate. It's in the past, replied Olivia, although the hurt was still present. Second, I want to make an official proposal. After the competition at Laguna Seca, I plan to expand the team. We're entering larger categories with more visibility. I want you to be our chief engineer. The proposal was unexpected. Chief engineer, Mark, I don't have technical training, much less in engineering. Titles are just formalities. What matters is results, and you deliver extraordinary results. It's a generous proposal, but the salary would be 3 times what you earn at Premium, with a career plan, possibility of international travel, profit sharing. Olivia's head was spinning. It was an offer that could solve all her family's financial problems, guarantee a comfortable future, open doors she hadn't even imagined existed. I need to think, Mark, and talk to my grandfather. Of course, but don't take too long. Other teams are already eyeing you, you know. Your name is circulating in the field. Leaving the warehouse, Olivia felt the weight of expectations on her shoulders. So many possibilities, so many divergent paths. Mark's proposal, the future at Premium Automotive, selling the shop, her grandfather's health, everything mixed in her mind like misaligned engine parts. She decided to stop by Premium Automotive before returning home. She needed to finalize some reports and, frankly, gain time to organize her thoughts before facing the inevitable conversation with Jack. To her surprise, she found Edward in a heated conversation with a man who seemed vaguely familiar. As she approached, she recognized him. He was the representative of the developer interested in her grandfather's shop property. Olivia. Edward seemed disconcerted to see her. I wasn't expecting you today. Clearly, she replied, feeling a wave of suspicion grow. What's going on here? The man in the suit smiled awkwardly and quickly withdrew, muttering something about resuming the conversation later. Edward adjusted his tie, visibly uncomfortable. Just a business meeting. With the same man who's pressuring my grandfather to sell the shop? What an interesting coincidence. Edward sighed deeply. It's not what it seems, Olivia. I was just... Explain it to me then, because it seems like you're somehow involved in the attempt to buy my grandfather's property. Edward's silence was answer enough. Olivia felt a wave of anger and betrayal. Why? What would you gain from this? Premium Automotive is expanding, Edward finally admitted. We need a space for a specialized branch for popular and domestic vehicles. Your grandfather's shop location is strategic. So all this time, hiring me, promoting me, was to facilitate the acquisition of my grandfather's shop. No, it wasn't like that. Your talent is real, Olivia. The opportunity I offered here is also real. But you never mentioned your interest in the property. You were never honest with me or my grandfather. Edward ran his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. Things got complicated. I didn't expect to care so much about you, about your work. You've become truly valuable to Premium. Valuable as an employee or as a facilitator for your real estate plans. The absence of an immediate response said it all. Olivia felt her stomach sink. Once again she was being used, manipulated by interests that weren't her own. It's over, Edward. I won't work here anymore. Olivia, please, let's talk. There's more to this story than you imagine. What part am I missing? The part where you and my grandfather have a complicated past? Or the part where you're using this for some kind of elaborate revenge? Edward paled. He told you about our past. Enough to know that you betrayed him once, and apparently you're ready to do it again. With those words, Olivia turned her back and quickly left, ignoring Edward's calls. Her world, which was already wobbling, now seemed to completely fall apart. All the people she had begun to trust had hidden agendas, personal interests that put her in second place. As she drove back home, one certainty crystallized in her mind. She needed to take the reins of her own destiny. She could no longer let herself be carried by the currents of others' ambitions. It was time, as her grandfather had said, to take the helm. The sun had not yet risen when Olivia got up on that decisive morning. She moved silently through the small house attached to the shop, letting Jack sleep. Rest was essential for his recovery. In the makeshift kitchen, she prepared a strong coffee and sat at the worn table, with a notebook open in front of her. During the sleepless night, an idea had taken shape in her mind. It wasn't just a plan, but a vision, something that combined everything she had learned in recent weeks with the legacy her grandfather had built. Now, in the dim light of the kitchen lamp, she organized her thoughts, drew diagrams, made calculations. Up, so early. Jack's voice surprised her. The old mechanic was at the door, looking more rested than in previous days. I had an idea, Grandpa. An idea that could change everything. Jack poured himself coffee and sat beside his granddaughter. I'm all ears. For almost an hour, Olivia explained her vision. Transforming Andrew's Auto Repair into a technical training center for young people from disadvantaged areas, combining the traditional mechanics that Jack mastered with the advanced technologies she had encountered at Premium Automotive. They would use her talent, now publicly recognized, as a magnet to attract partners, investors, and students. Instead of just fixing cars, we would train the next generation of mechanics and technicians, she explained, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. We could offer courses, workshops, mentorships, young people who, like me, have talent but don't have access to formal education. Jack listened attentively, his face a mixture of surprise and admiration. It's a beautiful idea, kid, but we would need money, structure, things we don't have. I've already thought about that. Olivia flipped through her notebook to a page with calculations. First, we have the proposal from the MR Racing team. Mark offered me a permanent position as chief engineer, with a salary that would resolve our debts in a few months. And would you accept working with him full-time? No. I would counter-propose a different arrangement, technical consulting, a few times a month, maintaining my independence to develop this project. Olivia paused. Additionally, the lecture at Riverside Tech can be a platform to present the idea, attract supporters. Jack shook his head, impressed. You've thought of everything. Not everything. There's still one problem, Edward. The mention of the name made Jack's expression harden. What about him? Olivia told him about the discovery at Premium Automotive, Edward's involvement with the developer interested in the shop's property. Jack listened without showing surprise. Typical of him, always playing on multiple boards at the same time. But there's something I don't understand, Grandpa. What's the complete story between you two? I feel there's more than just a professional dispute. Jack sighed deeply, as if finally surrendering to a long-avoided truth. Edward was more than my apprentice, Olivia. He was like a son to me. The revelation caught Olivia by surprise. What do you mean? I found him when he was only 17, living on the streets after running away from an abusive home. I offered him work, a roof, food. I taught him everything I knew about mechanics. For almost 10 years, he was part of my family. And then he betrayed your trust, taking clients and a partner. Yes, but it wasn't that simple. Jack stared at his coffee cup as if he could see the past there. I also made mistakes. I was a different man back then, stubborn, proud, resistant to change. Edward wanted to modernize the shop, expand service-imported cars. I refused. We had an ugly fight. Said things we regretted. So it wasn't just ambition on his part? Ambition was always there, but there was also vision, something I lacked. What hurt me most wasn't him leaving. It was how he left without saying goodbye, taking half the business with him. And you never talked after that? Foolish pride of two stubborn men, Jack smiled sadly. And now, 30 years later, we're at this impasse. He wants the shop property and I need to sell to pay debts. Olivia reflected for a few moments. What if there's a third option, one that involves neither selling to Edward nor fighting alone? What option would that be? A partnership, not with Premium Automotive, but with Edward personally. He has resources, connections, business knowledge. We have a history, an identity, a purpose. Jack seemed skeptical. After everything, you think he would accept a partnership? I don't. No, but I think it's worth trying. Olivia stood up, determined. I have to go to the competition at Laguna Seca today. After that, we'll talk to Edward. Laguna Seca Raceway pulsed with the energy of amateur competitions. The event, although smaller than the major professional races, attracted enthusiasts, sponsors, and emerging talents from American motorsports. The MR racing team had set up their structure in the paddock, with the car already positioned for final adjustments. Mark came to meet Olivia as soon as she arrived. I thought you wouldn't come. I tried calling you several times yesterday. I had a lot to process, she replied, putting on the team uniform. Where are we in the preparations? As she worked on the final adjustments to the car, Olivia felt strangely calm. The last few weeks had been an emotional roller coaster, but now, with a clear plan in mind, she found herself centered, focused on the present moment. The race would be in 2 hours. Dan was passing the last telemetry data, while Roger checked every mechanical detail. Mark, already dressed in his driver's suit, seemed nervous. This is our chance to enter the upper category, he commented. If we get a good result today, sponsors will notice. Olivia nodded, but her mind was already beyond that race. She had made a decision about her future, and although she still needed to communicate it to Mark, she knew it was the right path. All ready? Asked Dan, approaching with the tablet full of data. Almost. I need to check one last thing in the injection system. As she leaned over the engine, Olivia noticed a subtle irregularity, something that would go unnoticed by most mechanics. But that could make a difference in critical moments of the race. Mark, come here, she called. Listen to this. The driver approached and leaned over the running engine. What am I looking for? Hear that small variation when it accelerates beyond 8,000 RPM? It's as if the engine hesitated for a fraction of a second. Mark concentrated, but shook his head. I can't perceive it. Trust me, it can make the difference between gaining a position or losing time on the straights. During the next hour, Olivia worked meticulously to correct the problem. When she finished, the engine sounded perfectly synchronized like a finely tuned orchestra. Amazing, murmured Roger, who was observing closely. You really hear things that no one else can. As the time for the race approached, the tension increased. Mark made the final preparations while the team took their positions. From the corner of the pits, Olivia noticed a familiar figure, Edward Foster, discreetly observing. Their gazes crossed briefly, but both looked away without signaling. Recognition. The race started intensely, with Mark maintaining himself among the top 5 in the initial laps. The team's strategy was conservative. Preserve the car at the beginning and attack in the second half of the race. In the command center, Olivia monitored every data point, every sound transmitted by the radio. Something is changing in the engine, she observed during the 10th lap. It's starting to heat up more than normal. Dan checked the data. The sensors show temperature within the limit. Trust me. Tell Mark to adjust his driving, save the engine more on the straights. Reluctantly, Dan transmitted the guidance. Mark, who was fighting for 3rd position initially, questioned it, but ended up following the advice. 3 laps later, 2 cars ahead of him faced technical problems related to overheating. The high temperatures of the Laguna Seca asphalt were taking their toll. How did you know? Asked Dan, impressed. I didn't know, I just felt it. Halfway through the race, Mark took the lead, maintaining a controlled pace according to Olivia's instructions. The team, initially skeptical about the conservative strategy, now watched with admiration as the more aggressive competitors faced problems. In the final laps, tension reached its peak when the second-place driver began to approach dangerously. Mark's car engine, although preserved by the earlier strategy, was beginning to show signs of fatigue. It's losing power coming out of the turns, observed Olivia, listening carefully to the transmission. Tell him to change the acceleration point, enter the throttle later and more smoothly. The precise technical guidance made the difference. Mark managed to maintain the advantage until crossing the finish line in first place, securing the most important victory in the history of MSR racing. The celebration in the pits was intense. Champagne, hugs, shouts of joy. Mark, returning from the podium ceremony, lifted Olivia in his arms. "You're a genius, a damn genius. Without you, we would have been in the middle of the pack." The entire team recognized the crucial role she had played. Roger, the veteran mechanic who had initially doubted her abilities, was the most emphatic. "In 30 years of motorsport, I've never seen anyone with your sensitivity for engines. You don't read data, you converse with the machines." Amid the yao-wai celebration, Olivia noticed that Edward was still present, observing from a distance. Making a sudden decision, she excused herself from the team and went to him. "I didn't expect to see you here," she commented. Edward shrugged. "I have some clients who participate in these competitions. I came to support them." "And to observe the competition?" A subtle smile appeared on his lips. "Maybe. You were exceptional today." "Thank you." Olivia hesitated for a moment. "Edward, we need to talk. Not about the past, but about the future. My grandfather and I have a proposal for you." Surprise was visible on his face. "What kind of proposal?" "One that can benefit all of us. Could you meet us tomorrow at the shop at 10 a.m.? Edward studied her for a few moments as if trying to decipher her intentions. "I'll be there." When Edward moved away, Mark approached Olivia, still exultant with the victory. "What were you two talking about?" "Possibilities," she replied enigmatically. "Mark, we also need to talk about your proposal." His smile faltered. "You're not going to accept, are you?" "Not on the original terms, but I have a counter-proposal that might interest you." The next morning, the small Andrews Auto Repair was exceptionally clean and organized. Jack, although he should still avoid exertion, had supervised the tidying, determined to receive Edward in a dignified environment. Olivia noticed that despite the old hurts, there was an almost palpable anxiety in her grandfather, as if part of him had been longing for this reconciliation for decades. Punctually at 10 a.m., Edward's luxury car parked in front of the shop. He got out wearing more casual clothes than usual, designer jeans and a dress shirt without a tie, as if trying to diminish the disparity between the worlds they represented. "Jack," he greeted formally, extending his hand. The old mechanic hesitated for a moment before accepting it. "Edward, it's been a while. 32 years to be exact." The weight of those 3 decades hung between them like a dense fog. Olivia indicated the small table in the corner of the shop where she had prepared coffee and water. "Thank you for coming," she began, when everyone was seated. "As you know, we're considering the developer's offer for the property." Edward nodded. "And as you discovered, I have a personal interest in the matter. What you may not know is that we have a different vision for this place." Olivia opened her notebook. "We want to transform Andrews Auto Repair into a technical training center for young people from disadvantaged areas." During the next half hour, Olivia presented her plan in detail. The combination of traditional techniques with modern technologies, the focus on natural talents without access to formal education, the potential for partnerships with companies and educational institutions. Edward listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When she finished, a reflective silence took over the environment. "It's an ambitious project," he finally commented, "but I see potential. The problem continues to be the initial funding and long-term sustainability." "That's where our proposal comes in," Jack intervened, surprising both Olivia and Edward with his initiative. "We want you to be our partner in this endeavor." Edward raised his eyebrows. "Partner, after everything?" "Precisely because of everything," replied Jack. "You and I, Edward, are 2 sides of the same coin. I represent tradition, knowledge passed from hand to hand through generations. You represent innovation, the ability to transform knowledge into a prosperous business. Together, we could offer something unique." The sincerity in the old mechanic's Words seemed to touch Edward deeply. For a moment, his facade of calculating businessman gave way to a vulnerability rarely seen. "Why now, Jack?" "After so many years." "Because life is too short for grudges," answered the old man, "and because my granddaughter taught me that sometimes you need to look forward, not backward." Edward turned to Olivia. "And you? After you discovered my involvement with the developer?" "I believe in second chances," she replied, "and I believe that all of us have something to gain from this partnership. You have the resources and connections. We have the knowledge, and now, thanks to the viral video, a platform of visibility." Edward stood up and slowly walked around the shop, touching old tools, observing the space with new eyes. He stopped in front of a framed photograph on the wall, the same one that Olivia had found weeks before, showing a young Edward alongside Jack. "Do you know why I left that way, Jack, without saying goodbye?" The old mechanic shook his head. "Because I couldn't look into your eyes and say I was leaving. You were more of a father to me than the man who conceived me." Edward paused. "When I started Premium Automotive, I convinced myself that I was just following my path, doing what was best for my career. But deep down, I always knew I had betrayed your trust." "We both made mistakes," admitted Jack. "I also didn't know how to listen to your ideas, didn't see that the world was changing. And now, 30 years later, your granddaughter is proposing we join forces." Edward smiled, returning to the table. "The irony doesn't escape me." "So what do you say?" asked Olivia. "It would be a technical and financial partnership. You would invest a smaller amount than buying the property, but would have a stake in the training center. And Premium Automotive could be one of the partner companies offering internships, equipment, know-how. The best students could be referred to work there." Edward reflected for a few moments. "I have one condition," he finally said. "I want you, Olivia, to continue doing technical consulting for Premium, at least once a week. Your talent is unique, and my clients have already gotten used to your level of excellence. I accept, as long as I have flexibility to manage other commitments." "Like the racing team?" questioned Edward with a knowing smile. "Yes, I talked to Mark yesterday. He accepted my counter-proposal. I'll be a technical consultant for the team, not a full-time employee, and they will be one of the first partners of the training center, offering opportunities for young talents." Jack, who was observing the negotiation, with evident pride extended his hand to Edward. "So do we have a deal?" The businessman hesitated for only a second before shaking it firmly. "We have a deal, and perhaps a new beginning." 6 months later, the Andrews Technical Training Center officially opened its doors. The small shed had been renovated and expanded, maintaining elements of the original shop, including Jack's old tools, now proudly displayed in special showcases. The inauguration ceremony attracted attention from local media and even some national outlets. The girl who listened to engines, as Olivia was still known, had become a symbol of intuitive talent and determination. "This place represents the union between tradition and innovation." She addressed the diverse audience that included everyone, from young people from disadvantaged areas to automotive industry businessmen. "We believe that there are many hidden talents in improvised garages, backyard shops, just waiting for an opportunity to flourish." In the front row, Jack and Edward sat side by side, two veterans who had overcome decades of resentment to build something greater than their differences. Carly, now administrative coordinator of the center, smiled proudly. Beside her, Phil, who had left Premium Automotive to become a technical instructor, applauded enthusiastically. Mark Rivers, whose team had won the amateur championship thanks to Olivia's technical guidance, announced the creation of 2 annual scholarships for young talents to develop in competitive motorsport. Among the first 20 students selected for the inaugural program, half were women, a particular insistence of Olivia, who knew well the gender barriers in the world of mechanics. After the ceremony, when most of the guests had already left, Olivia found Jack sitting on his old stool contemplating the transformed space. "What do you think, Grandpa?" "I'm thinking about how things change in unexpected ways," he replied with misty eyes. 6 months ago, I was ready to sell this place, give up everything I built, and now it has gained a new life. Thanks to you, if it weren't for everything you taught me. No, kid, you made this happen. Jack squeezed his granddaughter's hand. You had the courage to dream bigger, to see possibilities where I only saw problems. Across the room, Edward was animatedly conversing with potential investors for the next phase of the project, expansion to a second center in another disadvantaged area of the city. He's changed, observed Olivia. Or maybe he was always like this, just lost in his own success. People are rarely just one thing, Olivia. Edward always had vision and ambition, but he also has heart. He just forgot that for a while. As we all do sometimes. That night, after everyone had left, Olivia remained alone in the renovated shop. She walked among the modern workbenches and state-of-the-art equipment, feeling the invisible presence of all the cars that had passed through there over the decades, of all the hands that had fixed engines in that space. Her phone rang. It was Roger, from the racing team, with questions about adjustments for the next competition. As they talked technically, Olivia smiled to herself, thinking about how her life had transformed since that morning when she went to pick up a simple part at Premium Automotive. The talent she had always considered common, her ability to hear what engines wanted to say, had become a bridge between worlds that seemed irreconcilable, the traditional and the modern, the popular and the sophisticated, the intuitive and the technical. As she hung up, she looked at the framed photograph. On the main wall, no longer just young Jack and Edward, but a new image. Her grandfather, Edward, Mark, Carly, and the first class of students at the center, all smiling under the newly inaugurated sign. Somewhere in the city, an engine was coming to life, beginning its own journey. And Olivia Andrews, the girl who had grown up among